and good afternoon, distinguished representatives of state parties, representatives of NHRIs and civil society organizations. You are once again welcome to the 66th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. As you recall, we have started considering Agenda Item 8 of the public session of the Commission, which concerns the activity reports of members of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. As I have indicated yesterday, upon concluding yesterday's session, today we will be considering 3 activity reports whose readiness have already been confirmed. These are the activity reports of the working group on older persons and persons with disabilities. Older persons and persons with disabilities, the activity report of the Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information, and the activity report of the working group on economic, social, and cultural rights. There were requests yesterday with respect to the activity reports that were presented and considered during the course of yesterday's session. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to give the floor now, as have been the case from previous practice, and also the advice from the Commission that once an activity report has been finalized, that we proceed to the next activity reports. That's what we will do. I would, in that respect, like to appreciate the submission by Forest People's Program and OGEC People's Development Program, as well as Alliance for Africa, of their interventions in respect to the activity reports that were considered yesterday. And I would like to assure them that the chairperson of the Working Group on Indigenous Populations and Communities, /communities, would take forward the interventions that we have submitted. The same is true for Alliance for Africa in respect to the activity report of the Special Rapporteur on the rights of women in Africa. With that, I would wish now to kindly extend my invitation to take the floor to Honorable Commissioner Hatem, who would be presenting the activity report of the working group on older persons and persons with disabilities that was chaired by Commissioner Jung previously, the former chairperson. Once again, I would like to express gratitude of the Commission to Commissioner Jung for the service that he has rendered in the promotion and protection of human rights in Africa as a member of the African Commission, but also in the various portfolios that he has been interested by the African Commission, including as chairperson of this particular working group. Commissioner Hatem, thank you very much, and you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bonjour tout le monde, messieurs honorables commissaires, messieurs le représentant des États, des ONG et des NDH. Ce matin, j'ai le plaisir et l'honneur de vous présenter le rapport de notre ami, le commissaire Young Sik-Yoon, en sa double qualité de commissaire et de président du groupe de travail sur les droits des personnes âgées et des personnes handicapées en Afrique. C'est un apport intercession et de fin de mandat. Et je joins ma voix à cette occasion à celle du président pour faire part de toute notre estime et de notre appréciation à notre collègue qui est toujours en activité au sein du Comité contre la discrimination raciale aux Nations Unies. Alors, ce rapport du commissaire Young est présenté à l'occasion de cette session. Il présente les activités intercession en qualité de commissaire, mais également de président du groupe de travail. Et c'est également, comme je l'ai dit, un rapport de fin de mandat. Alors, la période qui est couverte, c'est la période qui va d'octobre-novembre à juillet 2020. Le commissaire Young, donc, pour des raisons sanitaires, n'a pas pu participer à la session de février et mars, puisque c'était le début de la pandémie de la COVID-19. Alors, participation à la 65e session ordinaire. Le commissaire Young a participé à la 65e session ordinaire qui a eu lieu du 21 octobre au 10 novembre à Banjul, en Gambie. Lors de la session, il a modéré le panel visant à sensibiliser les États parties à la ratification des protocoles sur les personnes âgées et sur les personnes handicapées en Afrique. Le communiqué de presse relatif aux 10 panels est disponible en suivant le lien cité dans son rapport. Les différentes délibérations et le travail effectué par la Commission lors de cette session ordinaire sont résumés également dans le communiqué final de la dite session. Les pays qui étaient à la charge du commissaire Young en sa qualité de commissaire étaient le Burundi, les Comores, le Lesotho, Madagascar et les Seychelles. Le commissaire Young donc, a suivi la situation des droits de l'homme dans ces pays et a informé, selon que de besoin, la Commission sur toute mesure qu'il avait lieu de prendre. Alors, dans cette veine, il a suivi la situation au Burundi et le processus électoral qui a abouti à l'arrivée à la magistrature suprême du président Evariste Ndayishimiye. Et cette élection a particulièrement retenu son attention. Ainsi, le 18 mai 2020, un communiqué de presse a été émis sur ce processus. Le communiqué était intitulé « Communiqué sur la tenue au Burundi des élections générales dans le contexte de prévalence de la pandémie coronavirus ». Cette déclaration, tout en regrettant la tenue des élections sans présence de l'observation internationale, dénonçait l'expulsion du Burundi des experts et du personnel de l'OMS en cette période critique de lutte synergique contre la propagation du Covid-19. En conséquence, j'ai invité les autorités burundaises à s'assurer que les échéances électorales du 20 mai 2020 et les processus subséquents soient conformes aux standards et principes internationaux en matière électorale tels que contenus dans la Charte et la Charte africaine de la démocratie, des élections et de la gouvernance, et à s'assurer que le droit à la santé des populations vivant au Burundi tel que garanti par la Charte est effectivement mis en œuvre en dépit de la pandémie Covid-19 prévalant dans ce contexte électoral. Ce fut également l'occasion pour le commissaire Young d'appeler le Burundi à tirer profit le plus possible de la coopération internationale disponible afin de lutter efficacement contre la pandémie Covid-19 dans ce contexte électoral et au-delà. Comme vous le savez tous, une nouvelle perspective s'ouvre pour le Burundi. Il est à espérer que les relations avec ce pays se raffermissent davantage afin que les questions des droits humains soient au cœur des discussions constructives avec la Commission. Le commissaire présente à cette occasion ses condoléances les plus sincères au Burundi tout entier pour le décès de son ex-président Pierre Nkurunziza. Pour ce qui concerne les situations des droits de l'homme aux Comores et à Madagascar, bien qu'aucune mesure spécifique n'ait été prise ou conseillée, des efforts sont en cours pour organiser des missions de promotion dans ce pays afin d'évaluer sur le terrain la situation des droits de l'homme qui y prévaut. C'est l'occasion d'appeler les gouvernements de ces pays à accéder aux demandes de missions de promotion, toutefois que la Commission en formule. S'agissant des Seychelles et du Lesotho, le contact avec la Commission est constant et ils ont une relation fructueuse dans la mesure où des missions de promotion ont été effectuées dans les 10 pays. Mais vu que ce qui a eu lieu aux Seychelles date de 2015 et que ce pays, au contraire du Lesotho, n'a pas soumis tous les rapports périodiques qui étaient en souffrance, il est nécessaire que les autorités des Seychelles collaborent plus étroitement avec le rapporteur pays de la Commission afin de permettre au plus vite une mission de promotion et la soumission des rapports périodiques dus. Comme dit par le passé, à l'occasion de cet exercice, le commissaire Young prévoit une amélioration de la relation entre la Commission et la majorité des pays dont il était rapporteur et il encourage ses collègues, c'est-à-dire nous-mêmes commissaires, à poursuivre formellement les consultations pour maintenir et renforcer ces relations. La réunion virtuelle du groupe de travail sur les droits des personnes âgées et des personnes handicapées en Afrique. En sa qualité de président du groupe de travail sur les droits des personnes âgées et des personnes handicapées en Afrique, du fait de la crise sanitaire, le commissaire Young a organisé le 5 juin 2020 une réunion extraordinaire et virtuelle du groupe de travail. La réunion avait pour objet d'avoir une vue d'ensemble de l'impact de la crise sanitaire sur la situation des droits des personnes âgées et des personnes handicapées sur le continent, étudier les aménagements possibles du plan d'action 2020 qui ne peut vraisemblablement pas se dérouler comme prévu et d'élaborer les grandes lignes du plan de travail du groupe de travail pour 2021. Cette réunion a également été l'occasion d'informer les membres experts du groupe de travail de la fin de leur mandat et du processus de sélection des nouveaux membres experts dont la nomination est prévue pour se tenir lors de la présente session de la 66e. À cet effet, les règles de création et de fonctionnement des mécanismes spéciaux de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples ont été portés à la connaissance des participants. Le plaidoyer pour la ratification du protocole relatif aux droits des personnes âgées et du protocole relatif aux droits des personnes handicapées. En vertu de son mandat et suite à une demande spécifique de l'Union africaine, le groupe de travail a dirigé le processus de rédaction de ces deux protocoles qui ont été adoptés par la Commission et envoyés à l'Union africaine qui a finalisé la procédure faisant un traité de ces instruments. C'est ainsi qu'en tant que traité de l'Union africaine, les deux protocoles ne sont pas encore en vigueur car toujours dans l'attente du seuil minimum requis pour leur ratification. C'est dans ce contexte que le groupe de travail et ses partenaires ont initié un programme de plaidoyer destiné à recueillir le nombre minimum nécessaire de ratification permettant à ces traités d'entrer en vigueur. Cette campagne multifacette inclut mes appels, c'est-à-dire les appels du commissaire Young, répétitifs aux États parties de ratifier les protocoles dans la présentation de son rapport d'activité intersession aux sessions ordinaires de la Commission. Dans cette veine s'inscrit le deuxième séminaire de sensibilisation des États membres sur la ratification des protocoles sur les personnes âgées et les personnes handicapées en Afrique, celui-ci qui devait se tenir en juillet 2020 au Gabon, au cas où les discussions très avancées avec cet État membre intéressé à accueillir cette activité aboutissaient, n'a pas pu se tenir pour cause de crise sanitaire. Le dit séminaire est prévu maintenant pour se tenir dès que les conditions le permettent et les autorités du Gabon sont invitées à collaborer étroitement avec la Commission sur ce projet. À ce jour, le protocole relatif aux droits des personnes âgées a été signé par 9 États membres avec aucune ratification enregistrée. Quant au protocole relatif aux droits des personnes handicapées, il enregistre actuellement 18 signatures par les États membres, parmi lesquels 3 l'ont ratifié. Les déclarations et les communiqués de presse. Durant l'intersession, le groupe de travail a publié des déclarations et des communiqués de presse selon sa pratique habituelle de célébrer et commémorer des dates présentant un intérêt majeur pour son mandat. Déclaration du groupe de travail sur les droits des personnes âgées et des personnes handicapées en Afrique de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples à l'occasion de la Journée internationale des personnes handicapées, 3 décembre 2019. Communiqué sur la tenue au bout des élections générales dans le contexte de prévalence de la pandémie coronavirus. Bref aperçu de l'œuvre de la contribution du commissaire Young au travail de la commission durant ces 2 mandats. L'aperçu s'articule autour de la charge du commissaire Young pour certains pays et celle de son mandat spécial de président du groupe de travail sur les droits des personnes âgées et des personnes handicapées en Afrique. Aussi, il faut noter que le commissaire Young est également membre de 2 autres mécanismes spéciaux de la Commission, notamment le groupe de travail sur les communications et le groupe de travail sur les industries extractives, l'environnement et les violations des droits de l'homme. L'immense travail qu'abattent ces 2 mécanismes spéciaux porte sa contribution et son expertise en matière de contentieux de l'ordre judiciaire et les questions de droits humains ayant trait à l'environnement et aux ressources naturelles. La charge de rapporteur pays. Au moment où le commissaire Young terminait son mandat, il était rapporteur pour le Burundi, les Comores, les Lesotho, Madagascar et les Seychelles, comme cité plus haut. Par le passé, le commissaire Young a été rapporteur pour le Bénin, la Centrafrique, la République arabe sahraouie démocratique, le Tchad, Sao Tomé et Principe. En sa qualité de rapporteur pays, il a suivi la situation des droits de l'homme dans ces pays et conseillé à la Commission des actions à mettre en œuvre pour une meilleure promotion et protection des droits de l'homme dans les 10 pays. Par ailleurs, il a entrepris seul ou conjointement avec d'autres membres de la Commission des missions de promotion au Bénin, aux Seychelles et au Lesotho. Durant les 12 années qu'a duré son mandat au sein de la Commission, il a été rapporteur pays pour 10 pays différents sur le continent et il a effectué 3 missions de promotion en sa qualité de rapporteur pays. La présidence du groupe de travail sur les droits des personnes âgées et des personnes handicapées. Le commissaire s'est vu confier le leadership de ce mécanisme spécial de la Commission depuis sa création en 2007, sous la forme initiale de point focal sur les questions des personnes âgées. Par la suite, en 2009, la Commission a jugé nécessaire de créer un groupe de travail sur les droits des personnes âgées et des personnes handicapées en Afrique et lui a confié la présidence. Son mandat en qualité de membre de ce groupe de travail, président de celui-ci, a été renouvelé depuis lors tous les 2 ans jusqu'au moment où est arrivée la fin de sa mission de commissaire. Sur cette période, le mécanisme spécial a été la cheville ouvrière d'avancées normatives inégalées à l'échelle continentale en ce qui concerne le droit des personnes âgées et des personnes handicapées, notamment les 2 protocoles de l'Union africaine ci-dessous. Le protocole à la Charte africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples relatif aux droits des personnes âgées en Afrique et le protocole de la Charte africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples relatif aux droits des personnes handicapées en Afrique. C'est aussi dans le cadre de ce mécanisme spécial que le projet de protocole sur les droits des citoyens à la protection sociale et à la sécurité sociale, qui a été déjà soumis au processus de formation du traité de l'Union africaine, a été élaboré conjointement avec le groupe de travail sur les droits économiques, sociaux et culturels. Le groupe de travail qu'il a présidé concentre un ensemble d'environ 15 résolutions qui sont relatives soit au monitoring de la situation des droits des personnes que couvre son mandat, soit aux aménagements et renouvellements de sa composition et son mandat par la Commission. Le groupe de travail a produit une dizaine de déclarations ou de communiqués de presse qui sont disponibles sur le site web de la Commission. En conclusion de ce dernier rapport d'intercession et de clôture de son mandat, il s'agit de remercier, dit le commissaire Young, les États partis et les autres parties prenantes, de même que de ses collègues commissaires pour la relation cordiale, professionnelle et fructueuse de travail qu'il a eu durant tout son mandat. Il remercie également le secrétariat et tout son personnel avec qui il a eu à travailler étroitement sur toute cette période. Il souhaite enfin bon vent à tous et surtout à quiconque prendra le relais pour la suite de l'œuvre entamée et les assure de son plein appui d'une manière ou d'une autre pour contribuer à leur mandat. Il dit que je leur laisse, et je n'ai eu cesse de le dire, certains aspects du mandat du groupe de travail pour lesquels je reconnais que nous n'avons pas été performants, ceux que j'ai intitulés dans mes rapports passés le champ inexploité du mandat, à savoir la recherche systématique, le suivi et la compilation complète de données et de bonnes pratiques concernant les droits des personnes âgées et des personnes handicapées en Afrique. Je suis sûr que mes collègues, dit-il, se pencheront sur ces aspects et en garantiront des progrès dans l'avenir. Il remercie pour leur aimable attention et souhaite avoir l'opportunité d'échanger sur des questions d'intérêt commun pour la promotion et la protection des droits de l'homme en Afrique, car les droits de l'homme sont notre responsabilité collective selon les termes de la devise de notre commission. Je remercie encore une fois le commissaire Young et je lui souhaite bon vent. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vous rends la parole.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Hattem, for presenting the end of term as well as the activity report of Commissioner Young, the chairperson of the working group on older persons and persons with disabilities. The activity report clearly shows the contribution of Commissioner Young in his capacity as a member of the Commission, but also in the various responsibilities entrusted to him by the African Commission, most notably as the chairperson of the working group on older persons and persons with disabilities. This category of people in our societies are among the most vulnerable people on account of their age and their disabilities. And the work of the working group is critical for ensuring that the various conditions of discrimination and marginalization that they face is addressed, and they do have an opportunity to enjoy the full measure of human rights on an equal basis with other members of society. And indeed, the working group, through the leadership of Commissioner Young, contributed to the expansion and strengthening of the system of protection of human rights as it relates to the rights of older persons and persons with disabilities, most notably, among others, through the elaboration of the two protocols to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, namely the protocol on the rights of older persons, that is one, and the other is the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights on the rights of persons with disabilities. I would like to call on states, parties, NHRIs, and civil society organizations to urge all states, parties to the African Charter, to ratify these very important protocols to the African Charter for the category of people for whom it enables them to deal with the structural conditions that inhibit their enjoyment of the full measure of human rights on an equal basis with others. Commissioner Young, as the activity report shows, also contributed through the working group in the elaboration of the draft protocol on the right to social protection, which was drafted together with the ECOSOC working group chaired by Commissioner King. Once again, I wish to thank Commissioner Hatem as well as Commissioner Young for this activity report. I haven't received any request from states parties to the African Charter or from representatives of NHRIs or civil society organizations to take the floor and make observations in respect to this activity report. Accordingly, I would like to indicate that we have concluded the consideration of this activity report of the working group on older persons and persons with disabilities. With that, while thanking Commissioner Hatem once again, I would like to now move to the next activity report. This is the activity report of the Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information. This is the activity report of former Vice Chairperson, Commissioner Lawrence Mute, to whom, once again, I would like to express a profound gratitude of myself and the Commission for the work that Commissioner Mute had accomplished as a member of the Commission, but also as a Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information, and various other responsibilities entrusted to him, including as Vice Chairperson of the Commission. We thank him for the service he rendered in the promotion and protection of human rights in Africa, and we wish him well in his next endeavors while looking forward to continuous collaboration. His report would be presented by the incoming Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information, and this is Honorable Commissioner Cena King. Honorable Commissioner King, you have the floor, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone again. I have the pleasure of presenting Commissioner Mute's report. There's some background noise that that's coming from my part, and I have no control over it, so I just want to apologize. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Right, thank you. I present this intercession activity report on behalf of Commissioner Lawrence M. Murungu Mute, outgoing Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information in Africa. The report is in 3 parts. There's an introduction, his intercessional activities, and his closing remarks. He prepared this report pursuant to the rules of the Commission, which requires each of the Commission's subsidiary mechanisms to present a report on its work at each ordinary session, and each Commissioner to submit a report on activities undertaken during the intercession. He submits this report to the 66th ordinary session in his capacity as the outgoing Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information in Africa. This report covers the intercession between the 65th ordinary session held in October 2019 and commencement of the 28th extraordinary session in May 2020, when his mandate effectively ended. Intercessional activities. He undertook the following activities as a member of the Commission and as the Special Rapporteur. From the 19th February to the 4th of March 2020, he attended the Commission's 27th extraordinary session, which was held in Banjul, the Gambia. On 19th May 2020, he convened a webinar to introduce the Declaration of Principles on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information in Africa, the 2019 Declaration, which was adopted during the Commission's 65th Ordinary Session in November 2019, in collaboration with the Center for Human Rights of the University of Pretoria and Article 19 East Africa. The online launch served as a forum for disseminating the Declaration, in addition to initiating discussions on the Declaration's continuing relevance to the exercise of Article 9 rights. The webinar participants included members of the Commission, civil society organizations working on freedom of expression and access to information issues, in addition to the general public. During the intercession period, he issued the following press releases and letters of urgent appeal. On the 28th of October 2019, he issued a press statement on the human rights situation in the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, noting with concern the escalation of protests which had taken place in the Oromia region on 23rd October 2019. It was noted that those protests spiraled into clashes among civilians and between civilians and security forces, which were increasingly fanned by ethnic and religious undercurrents, with groups being mobilized to attack minority ethnic communities and churches. On 22nd November 2019, in collaboration with the Commissioner Rapporteur for the United Republic of Tanzania, a press statement on the deteriorating human rights situation in Tanzania was issued. The press release highlighted various areas of concern, notably freedom of expression and the media, freedom of association, particularly the free operation of civil society organizations and opposition party members, in addition to the rights to non-discrimination, equality, and education of pregnant girls and teen mothers. On 27th March 2020, he transmitted a letter of appeal in response to reports received regarding the arrest and prolonged pre-trial detention of Mr. Mohamed Al-Yamani, a freelance journalist working in the Arab Republic of Egypt, who had reportedly been in detention since 8th of December 2019. On 27th March 2020, Commissioner Mute transmitted a letter of appeal to the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia regarding the abduction of at least 18 university students from Dembi Dolo University, southwest of Ethiopia, in December 2019. On 8th April 2020, Commissioner Mute also issued a press release on the importance of access to the internet in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, which notably expressed concern on the incidence of internet shutdowns amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. The press release called on state parties to guarantee respect and protect the rights to freedom of expression and access to information through ensuring access to internet and social media services, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. On 17th April 2020, Commissioner Mute issued a press release on the publication of the 2019 Declaration, which announced its publication on the Commission's website. The declaration is now available on the website in the 4 AU languages. On 28th April 2020, Commissioner Mute participated in a joint letter of appeal to the Republic of Mozambique regarding the enforced disappearance of Mr. Ibrahimu Abu Baraku, a community radio journalist at Palma Community Radio in Mozambique. The letter was issued in response to reports that Mr. Baruko may have arbitrarily been detained because of his work as a journalist, particularly his reports on the ongoing armed attacks in the region. On 5th May 2020, in collaboration with the country rapporteur on the human rights situation in Tanzania and the chairperson of the Working Group on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, a letter of urgent appeal was transmitted to the United Republic of Tanzania regarding the rights of the people in Tanzania to the protection of their health and life, and for having access to public health information in the context of the novel coronavirus pandemic in the country. Closing remarks of Commissioner Muti. Commissioner Muti's closing remarks is that it has been his pleasure and honor to serve as special rapporteur for the last 3 years. During that time, the Commission has made significant steps in clarifying applicable standards for implementation of Article 19 of the Charter. In the course of that time, he has also undertaken invaluable engagement with state and non-state actors towards the better implementation of Article 9. Commissioner Mute is confident that the new special rapporteur will position the Commission on an even better trajectory for the full implementation of the right to freedom of expression and access to information in Africa. Commissioner Mute concludes his report by thanking all the stakeholders who have worked with him over the last few years towards implementation of his mandate. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner King, for presenting the activity report of Commissioner Mute, the Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information, who was also a very good friend to me and a coach when I joined the Commission. So I very much appreciate that activity report and the collaborative work that have been delivered. As you can see, the activity report also of Commissioner Mute reflects the range of activities that have been undertaken in pursuit of the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information, which is one of the most regularly contentious areas of work of the Commission, on account of the fact that freedom of expression more often than not faces restrictions and violations on various occasions for a wide range of reasons. We therefore appreciate the continued work and join him in expressing confidence that Commissioner King would definitely take this portfolio to a higher status. There are a number of requests for the floor in respect to freedom of expression and access to information activity report of Commissioner Mute. I would therefore like to start with African Freedom of Information Center. If we have the representative of Africa Freedom of Information Center, this is the NGO with observer status 434. Okay, we have Africa Freedom of Information Center. If you kindly put the video on, excellent. You are most welcome. You kindly take the floor. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable Chairperson, the Honorable Commissioners for the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, state delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Africa Freedom of Information Center, a Pan-African civil society membership organization, and its members and partner in Cameroon, namely Citizens Governance Initiative Cameroon, Afro Leadership, and ADISI Cameroon, greatly appreciate this opportunity to address the 66th Ordinary Session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. The organizations mentioned above, Mr. Chairperson, presented a shadow report to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights on the state of access to information and freedom of expression in the Republic of Cameroon. Chairperson, the shadow report that we presented highlighted the state of access to information and freedom of expression in Cameroon, including the ratification and domestication of African Union treaties that recognize the rights, and also implementation of the recommendations from treaty bodies and adoption of the implementation of national laws, as well as the practices in Cameroon. We would like to commend the Republic of Cameroon, Mr. Chairperson, for its commitment and obligations to state reporting under Article 62 of the African Charter. The Republic of Cameroon has also equally taken positive steps in ensuring that there is freedom of expression and access to information in its republic. It has, for example, ratified all the 6 treaties of the African Union that recognize the right of access to information. And this include the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, the African Union Convention on Prevention and Combating of Corruption, and as well as the African Charter on Values and Principles of Public Service, among others. The preamble of the National Constitution of Cameroon, Mr. Chairperson, recognizes the fundamental right of access to information and freedom of expression. However, despite these commitments by the Republic of Cameroon, there are still instances of violation of these specific rights. Cameroon remains on the list of the low-ranking countries in terms of freedom of expression in the world. Currently, Mr. Chairperson, it actually ranks 134 out of 180 countries in the world, making it fall 3 places compared to the previous 131 out of 180 countries in the world in terms of freedom of expression and access to information. Mr. Chair, after internet shutdown that took place in 2017 and 2018 for about 240 cumulative days in the Anglophone regions in Cameroon, social President George Barria's election. On this further, Mr. Chairperson, the war against Boko Haram and the rise of hate speech on social media has also resulted in increased violations against freedom of expression and access to information. On September 18, 2019, the African Commission actually published a decision finding Cameroon responsible for violation of these rights. And this was specifically in reference to the banning of some of the licenses by some of the media and radio stations in the country. Furthermore, Mr. Chairperson, the African Commission has also provided various concluding observations to the Republic of Cameroon. And if I may highlight a few, the African Commission has in the past, and this was in 2010 and 2013, requested the Republic of Cameroon to harmonize the national legislation with the Declaration of Principles of Freedom of Expression in Africa, as well as requested the Republic of Cameroon to amend its provisions on the penal code regarding to the decriminalization of press freedom in Cameroon. In conclusion, Mr. Chairperson, we recommend, as these institutions mentioned above, that in Cameroon, consistent with the ACHPR previous recommendations, the African Union treaties and the African model law, Cameroon therefore should urgently adopt a national access to information legislation, which it does not have up to date. Secondly, the government should review and revamp the law on social communication in Cameroon. The amendment must take into account and guarantee questions of access to information for the journalists, as well as decriminalization of press offenses in the country. Lastly, Mr. Chairperson, We also request that the Republic of Cameroon should address impunity for crimes against journalists by putting stringent measures to investigate as well as punish the perpetrators for these violations. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, for this consideration.
Thank you for that intervention. On behalf of Africa Freedom of Information Center, highlighting issues relating to freedom of expression and access to information with a specific focus on Cameroon. The next request is from the Human Rights Institute of South Africa. The Human Rights Institute of South Africa. This is the organization with observer status number 253. If we have the representative of the Human Rights Institute of South Africa, I have an indication that we have the representative. I would like to request the representative to take the virtual platform for making the statement. It looks like that we are having a problem for getting Human Rights Institute of South Africa connected to us right now. While waiting for Human Rights Institute of South Africa to get connected, may I request if we have Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights with us? Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. Okay, we have Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. This is the NGO with observer status 329. Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. You have the floor, please.
Honorable Chairperson,
You are welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Just to clarify that there's Media Institute who is presenting the statement on freedom of expression, not Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights. I think there was a mix-up in registration.
So in the light of, can you indicate the observer status number of?
It's 291 of Media Institute of Southern Africa.
291 Media Institute of South Africa. Okay.
Southern Africa. So there's Tabani who is going to be presenting that statement. Thank you.
Southern Africa. Since we will not get back to this activity report, I would then request that the representative of Media Institute of Southern Africa with observer status 291 to take the floor, please. Do we have Media Institute of Southern Africa? Okay, I'm getting an indication that we have.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Commissioners, State Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the Media Institute of Southern Africa presents this statement during the 66th session of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights under very difficult conditions, specifically focusing on Zimbabwe. The right to freedom of expression and access to information is under attack in the country. Of particular concern is the attack on the safety and security of journalists. As we convene today, there's a journalist, investigative journalist, Wopo Chingono, who was arrested yesterday for running an expose of corruption cases in the country. Since the beginning of April, we have registered 24 cases of journalists who are being targeted, harassed, detained, and assaulted by security forces in the country. There is also the second issue, Honorable Chairperson, that of an attempt to mutilate the constitution of the country through proposing Constitution Amendment number 2, which is an omnibus amendment of 27 proposals, which would take away the gains of the Constitution of 2013, which is quite expansive in terms of Bill of Rights. The third issue, Honorable Chairperson, is on the facade of liberalization of the airwaves in the country, where the state is aimed at registering its own community radio stations against the will of the people of the country. By doing so, the government is sponsoring its own voices and decentralizing state broadcaster at the expense of the marginalized communities who daily need to communicate. They are setting steep accreditation fees of up to $2,000 per application per community. And in their draft law, they are outlawing donations for the establishment of community radios. This is aimed at keeping the ruling elite with their sole voices in the broadcasting sector within the country. The fourth issue, Honorable Chairperson, is on the undemocratic governance of the internet, which is being proposed by the bill which is before Parliament, the Cyber Security and Data Protection Bill. This bill is creating a mass surveillance of the citizens under the guise of creating numerous institutions that seek to snoop on the citizens through giving the military greater access to surveillance mechanisms and invading the right to privacy through the regulator, the Postal and Telecommunication Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe. The last issue, Chairperson, is that of the unfinished business of law reform, which requires a holistic approach in terms of reviewing all the laws that are affecting our country. That is the laws such as the Censorship and Entertainment Controls Act, the Interception of Communications Act, and many others that continue to hinder expression at the instigation of the government. Having noted this piecemeal approach to law reform, Chairperson, I therefore recommend that the Commission takes a firm stand on ensuring that the government of Zimbabwe upholds the safety and security of journalists and immediately stop attacking the media while they are doing their job. Secondly, Chairperson, we propose that the Commission takes a stand in terms of the quality of the reforms that are going on in the country and ensuring that liberalization of the broadcasting industry is holistic and is aimed to empower the communities rather than the ruling elite. Thirdly, Chairperson, that the regulation of the internet space be gauged in line with the revised Commission's declaration on principles of expression and access to information, which ensures that internet is a right as opposed to the mass surveillance regime that is being proposed in Zimbabwe. And lastly, Chairperson, that the Commission takes a stand that Zimbabwe, instead of mutilating its constitution, adheres to the process of law alignment in terms of doing away with the laws that affect freedom of expression and access to information in support of the expansive Bill of Rights that is secured in the 2013 Constitutional Charter of Zimbabwe. Honorable Chairperson, Commissioners, we really thank you for the splendid job that you are doing in promoting these rights. Thank you.
Thank you for that statement, of Media Institute of Southern Africa on freedom of expression and access to information issues, particularly as it relates to the situation in Zimbabwe, drawing, among other things, to the attention of the Commission a very fresh incident recorded yesterday of the arrest of a journalist under very grave situations where forceful entry into the house without court warrant have been reported, and other African Commission, as we said, despite the fact that we are in a state of COVID-19, this state of COVID-19 doesn't suspend the application and operation of existing human rights. So we continue to feel concerned about other issues of human rights beyond and above COVID-19. And this is indeed one of those. Thank you once again for that statement. I'm sure Commissioner King have taken note of all those points. The other request, as I indicated earlier on, was from Human Rights Institute of South Africa. Do we have Human Rights Institute of South Africa? Okay, we have. Thank you, Edward. May I ask the representative of Human Rights Institute of South Africa with observer status 253 to take the floor and put the statement on record. Thank you.
Yes, it's Kathy speaking. Honorable Chairperson and Vice Chairperson.
Madam,
Okay,
can you kindly please put the video on?
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Honorable Chairperson and Vice Chairperson of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, honorable members of the African Commission, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to the Special Rapporteur on giving us the insight on freedom of expression and access to information in Africa. I also wanted to add up more insight. We have
we have encountered a network problem with our connection with representative of Human Rights Institute of South Africa. I'm not sure how we should proceed. Okay, Edwell, can you kindly request that the representative of Human Rights Institute of South Africa try to connect with us again? Do we have the representative back online? Not yet. Okay. So in the meantime, let me give the floor to Commissioner King for her observations in respect of the previous interventions. And then if we have the representative of Human Rights Institute of South Africa back online, we'll give her the floor. Commissioner King.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. And I want to thank all those who took the floor in response to Commissioner Mute's intercession activity report. I want to particularly take note of the issues of concern in relation to freedom of expression and access to information in Cameroon, as well as the recent occurrences in Zimbabwe. And I want to use this opportunity to call on all state parties to the Charter to make use and to take the necessary measures to ensure the safety and security of journalists, as well as to take the necessary measures to advance the right to freedom of expression and access to information. And I also want to thank the civil society who took the floor and appreciated the work of Commissioner Mute whilst he was in the commission in advancing the right to freedom of expression and access to information. I look forward to more cooperation in terms of as we work together to promote this right that is guaranteed in the Charter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner King. Edwell, do we have the representative? Okay, let's give the floor to the representative of Human Rights Institute of South Africa.
Thank you. Oh, okay, thank you. I'll just continue where I left off. This is the first time in post-apartheid South Africa that a journalist fled the country with the intention of seeking asylum as a result of reprisals, media rule. Okay, yes. Okay. Okay, I'll start off from where I left off. We received concerning reports of flagrant violation of the right to disseminate information to the public, enforcement of measures to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 pandemic has been used as a pretext to restrict journalists from exercising their duties of covering stories and information about the pandemic, corruption, and holding states accountable. In South Africa, the news editor Paul Mtoba fled to Lesotho last week after repeated beatings by police in Vicksburg, Free State Province, for covering news on coronavirus epidemic. This is the first time in post-apartheid South Africa that a journalist fled the country with the intention of seeking asylum as a result of reprisals in connection media rule. He was assaulted in his attempt to lay a complaint against the police at the Vicksburg police station and detained arbitrarily for several hours. He reported the incidents to the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, but police retaliated him by charging him with violation of the lockdown regulations. He faces up to 6 months imprisonment under the Disaster Management Act as amended in April 2020 to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. And rubber bullets were also fired at Azara Karim, the News 24 reporter, while covering a lockdown enforcement operation in Johannesburg on the first day of the national lockdown. In Swaziland, media and journalists face severe repression. The country has about 32 laws that restrict freedom of expression and media freedom. Eugene Dube, the editor of Swazi Newsweek covering political, economic, and social news, in May 2020, he fled the country following a brutal attack and raid by police officers for publishing articles criticizing the king. We are also raising our grave concern at the impunity persisting in Zimbabwe and the hostility held by the government against journalists in exercising freedom of expression, opinion, and dissemination of information to the public. The state security had forced entry onto the property Hopewell of Chino Ono, an award-winning journalist, without a warrant and arbitrarily arrested him. We are calling the African Commission on Human and People's Rights to urge the state parties to do the following: to abstain from abduction, assault, harassment, arbitrary arrest of journalists, and guarantee them freedom and safety to conduct their work in their countries as stipulated in Article 9 of the African Charter. Implement the African Commission Declaration on Freedom of Expression in Africa adopted in November 2019. To develop framework including undertaking reforms of information legislative frameworks in line with the African Commission, the African Human Right and People's Right Model Law on access to information in Africa, Government of Zimbabwe to immediately and unconditionally release Hopewell Chino Ono and end persecution in the country, South Africa to arrest law enforcement officers responsible for the attack and arbitrary arrest of the journalist, to immediately drop charges against Paul Ntobo to enable him to return home to assume his duties in a safe, free environment. The Kingdom of Swaziland to repeal repressive laws to freedom of expression, opinion, and access to information to enable journalists carrying out their jobs.
Okay, it looks like that we have lost the representative of Human Rights Institute of South Africa, but at least this time around, we have managed to get the essence of the statement from the Human Rights Institute of South Africa, for which we express our appreciation. I would like to give the floor to Commissioner King.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to appreciate the statement from the Human Rights Institute of South Africa. And we've noted the concerns and the reports about a journalist in South Africa who had to flee the country to seek asylum, and also the situation on freedom of expression and access to information in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Again, I would also want to urge all states to take note of the recent Declaration of Principles on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information in Africa, which was adopted by the Commission in 2019, and to make sure that they facilitate and give a conducive environment for journalists to be able to practice their profession in safety, and to take note of these reports, if true, which would amount to a violation of the Charter, and to take the necessary steps to redress these issues if they are true. So I also want to thank Human Rights Institute and ask that we continue to work together as we advance the rights of the Charter, in particular Article 9 on freedom of expression and access to information. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Commissioner King. I join you in calling on states, parties to the African Charter to comply with and follow the guidelines and principles on freedom of expression and access to information of the African Commission. And in this respect, with respect to the journalists who have been arrested at the African Commission, we request, and I join Commissioner King in this respect, that due process of the law is strictly observed in order to ensure that fair trial, if charges are going to be leveled against a journalist, and all due consideration of the rights guaranteed in the African Charter. Thank you once again for that. I wish now to this brings us to the end of our consideration of the activity report of the Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression and Access to Information, former Vice Chairperson, Commissioner Lawrence Mute. I wish to once again thank him for the service that he has rendered as a member of the Commission, and also thank Commissioner King for presenting this report. We now move to the next activity report. This would be the activity report of Commissioner Cena King, who is the chairperson of the Working Group on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Commissioner King, once again, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is my report, intercession activity report, as a member of the Commission and as the outgoing chairperson of the Working Group on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights in Africa, and as the chairperson of the Committee on Resolutions. This report is prepared in accordance with the Rules of Procedure 2020 of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, in particular Rule 25.3 and 64. And I present my report in the capacities that I have mentioned. And it covers activities carried out during the intercession period, between November 2019 and July 2020, and is structured in 5 parts. Part 1, that's activities undertaken in my capacity as commissioner and a member of the commission. Part 2, activities undertaken in my capacity as outgoing chairperson of the working group on economic, social, and cultural rights. Part 3, activities undertaken in my capacity as chairperson of the committee on resolutions. And the final part deals with challenges, recommendations, and conclusion. Participation in the 27th extraordinary session of the commission. I participated in this session held from 19th February to 4th March 2020 in Banjul, and the activities of this session are as highlighted in the communique, which is accessible on the website of the commission. I also participated in the 28th extraordinary session held virtually from the 29th of June to the 1st of July 2020. At this session, 4 newly elected commissioners made their solemn declaration during the session and went through an induction ceremony. The final communique of this session is also available on the website of the commission. The end of the 28th extraordinary session also marked the end of my mandate as chairperson of the working group on economic, social, and cultural rights. Part 2, activities undertaken in my capacity as outgoing chairperson of the working group. From the 17th to the 19th of December 2019, I participated in the sensitization seminar on the promotion and protection of the rights of women in Africa, jointly organized by the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Women in Africa, the chairperson of the Committee for the Protection of the Rights of Persons Living with HIV and those at risk, vulnerable and affected by HIV, the chairperson of the working group, that's myself, and the chairperson of the working group on death penalty, extrajudicial, summary or arbitrary killings and enforced disappearances in Africa. This seminar took place in Dakar, Senegal, and I made a presentation on women and economic, social, and cultural rights in Africa. Press releases on the COVID-19 crisis. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, 2 statements, I participated in the issue of 2 statements, namely press statements on the coronavirus COVID-19 crisis on 28th February 2020, and a press release by the working group on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on economic, social, and cultural rights on the 4th of June 2020. The objective of these press statements was to remind state parties of their obligation to observe and protect human and people's rights in their efforts to combat the pandemic in their respective countries. Norm developments on the state's obligations to regulate private actors involved in the provision of social services. Following a resolution passed at the 27th extraordinary session on the need to develop norms on state obligation to regulate private actors involved in the provision of social services, the Working Group on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights selected partners held 2 virtual preparatory meetings on 8th May 2020 and 5th June 2020, respectively, to discuss the norm to be developed, its scope and structure. Publication of the guidelines on the right to water in Africa. On 1st July 2020, the guidelines on the right to water in Africa, elaborated under my leadership and adopted at the Commission's 26th extraordinary session, were published on the Commission's website. To mark the occasion, I issued a press statement on the importance of the guidelines, especially in assisting states to develop appropriate preventive measures in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. Updates on the study on illicit financial flows in Africa. The Commission's Resolution 236 mandated the working group and the working group on extractive industries, environment, and human rights to jointly undertake an in-depth study on the impact of illicit capital flight on human rights in Africa. A joint special mechanism meeting was held in February 2019, during which the study on illicit financial flows in Africa was presented to members of the working groups and other selected experts. The final draft is to be finalized for presentation to the Commission. Updates on the study on climate change and human rights. The working group and the working group on extractive industries, environment, and human rights were also mandated by the Commission to undertake a study on climate change and human rights. This study has not been undertaken. Updates on the process of the adoption of the draft protocol to the African Charter on the rights of citizens to social protection and social security. Last year, the Commission adopted the draft protocol to the African Charter on the rights of citizens to social protection and social security, and transmitted this document to the Department of Social Affairs of the African Union Commission for adoption by the AU Assembly of Heads of State and Government. The internal processes are ongoing at the level of the African Union, and it is expected that it will be presented shortly for consideration and adoption. Joint letters to state parties on allegation of violations of economic, social, and cultural rights. I sent a joint letter of concern to the Republic of Sudan on 18th May 2020, together with the Commissioner Rapporteur on the human rights situation in the Republic of Sudan regarding the alleged arbitrary dismissal of employees in the National Civil Service of Sudan based on perceived alliance with the former regime. In the letter, we urge the government of the Republic of Sudan to provide clarification to the Commission regarding the above stated allegations, carry out prompt and impartial investigation into the allegations without delay, guarantee the right to work under equitable and satisfactory conditions, ensure that due process of law is followed in the termination of employees, respect regional and international standards on the right to work, and generally to comply with the African Charter on human and people's rights, as well as other relevant human rights instruments to which the Republic of Sudan is a party. I also sent a joint letter of appeal to the United Republic of Tanzania, together with the Commissioner responsible for the human rights situation in Tanzania and the Special Rapporteur on freedom of expression and access to information concerning the promotion and protection of human rights during the COVID-19 pandemic. We urge the government of the United Republic of Tanzania to ensure that all necessary measures are taken to institute preventive measures to secure the health, safety, and life of all people in Tanzania without distinction, while complying with the human rights standards, including safe access by prisoners to their lawyers, ensure that factual, regular, intelligible, and science-based information is available to all people on inter alia the spread of COVID-19 in the country and across different regions, and the precautionary measures people should adopt to protect themselves from contracting the virus, work with community and religious leaders to adopt measures that fully comply with preventive measures, including banning of meetings and religious gatherings, while facilitating alternative ways through which people can continue to practice their right to freedom of religion, and inform the Commission of the steps it has taken or intends to take in complying with these recommendations. The Commission is still awaiting responses to the above letters. Part 3, activities undertaken in my capacity as the Chairperson of the Committee on Resolutions. As the Chairperson of the Resolutions Committee, I wish to report that during the 65th Ordinary Session held in Banjul, the Gambia, from 21st October to 10th November 2019, the Commission adopted the following resolutions finalized during the intercession period, which could be found on the website of the Commission. Resolution on the renewal of the African Commission Special Mechanisms Mandate. Resolution on the appointment of expert members of the Committee for the Prevention of Torture in Africa. Resolution on the use of expertise of former commissioners to advance the work of the Commission. Resolution on the human rights situation in the Republic of South Sudan. Resolution on the human rights situation in the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Resolution on the recognition, promotion, and protection of indigenous languages. Resolution on elections in Africa. Resolution on the drafting of an African Declaration on the promotion of the role of human rights defenders and their protection in Africa. And a resolution on the right to food and nutrition in Africa. During the 27th extraordinary session held in Banjul, the Gambia, from 19 February to 4th March, the Commission adopted the following resolutions, which could also be found on the website of the Commission. Resolution on the post-election crisis in the Republic of Guinea-Bissau. Resolution on the extension of the deadline for the submission of the draft study on the situation of Africa's sacred natural sites and territories. Resolution on the need to develop a study on the situation of African human rights defenders in exile. Resolution on the need to develop guidelines for shadow reporting. Resolution on the need to develop norms on the obligation of states to regulate private actors involved in the provision of social services. And resolution on the need to prepare a study on the use of force by law enforcement officials in Africa. Part 4, challenges, recommendations, and conclusion. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted gaps in the health sector, which undermines individuals' rights to enjoy the best attainable state of physical and mental health, as well as access to receive medical attention when they are sick, guaranteed by Article 16 of the African Charter. The focus on the COVID-19 response has resulted in less attention being given to maternal and infant mortality, with the risk of cutting back the gains made in reducing maternal and infant mortality, as well as other diseases. There are also reports about inadequate economic and social welfare coverage to individuals, especially vulnerable groups, in order to protect them from the negative consequences of the pandemic, which continue to threaten lives and livelihood, in particular the right to housing, health, education, water, sanitation, food, and work. The outbreak of the COVID-19 has also impeded the implementation of some of the Commission's activities, including those pertaining to my various mandates. Planned activities that require the physical presence of participants were cancelled, and this has affected the output of the working group for the period under review. Recommendations. In the light of the aforementioned analysis, I wish to make the following recommendations to the various stakeholders. State parties. To state parties, my recommendations are as follows. Take legislative and other measures for the full realization of economic, social, and cultural rights in the African Charter, with the principles and guidelines on economic, social, and cultural rights, the guidelines on the right to water in Africa, and other regional and international human rights norms at all times, including periods of national emergencies like the pandemic at hand. Strengthen healthcare systems, including increased budgetary allocation, provision of ventilators, test kits, personal protective equipment, medical supplies, and consumables required for the prevention and treatment of COVID-19, address maternal and infant health, as well as other diseases. Empower individuals and communities with timely, comprehensive, and accessible information about COVID-19 prevention and treatment. Commence bilateral and multilateral negotiations to ensure that any proven medical treatment and vaccine for COVID-19 is affordable, and available and will benefit the populations. Implement the recommendations in the Commission's press releases relating to appropriate human and people's rights responses to the COVID-19 crisis, and support the adoption of the draft protocol to the African Charter on the right to social protection and social security. My recommendation to civil society organizations are as follows. Continue to collaborate and support advocacy efforts at the national, sub-regional, and continental levels to implement economic, social, and cultural rights. Increase the level of sensitization of all stakeholders, including the general population, on the existence and consequences of COVID-19 and the need for a collective effort to combat it. To other partners, my recommendation is that you provide support to the working group to enable it to effectively implement its mandate. In conclusion, as I hand over the position of the chairperson of the Working Group on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights to my colleague, Honorable Commissioner Mudford Zachariah Mwandenga, I would like to express my deep appreciation to Ms. Marie Sen, Senior Legal Officer, and Ms. Aya Jennifer Duabu, the AU Youth Volunteer, who have been providing me with the necessary assistance to discharge my mandate to the best of my ability. I also want to thank the members of the Working Group on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, both colleague commissioners and expert members for the work we did together successfully. I also want to thank all of the partners and stakeholders who have supported the Working Group in various ways and ask that you continue this support. I am convinced that my successor, Commissioner Mwandenga, will continue to carry out this important work of promoting and protecting economic, social, and cultural rights in Africa, which needs continuous and sustained commitment, advocacy, and action. This is because this cluster of human rights has not been given the necessary attention and resources that it deserves. Some of these rights are categorized as directive principles of state policy in some national constitutions and are not justiciable. These practices are inconsistent with the letter and spirit of the Charter, which in its preamble states as follows, and I quote, "Convinced that it is henceforth essential to pay a particular attention to the right to development, and that civil and political rights cannot be dissociated from economic, social, and cultural rights in their conception as well as universality, and that the satisfaction of economic, social, and cultural rights is a guarantee for the enjoyment of civil and political rights." End of quote. Thank you very much for your attention to this report. Mr. Chair, I hand over the floor to you. Thank you.
Many thanks to you, Commissioner King, on presenting your activity report as the chairperson of the Working Group on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, as a member of the African Commission, as well as a member of various other mechanisms of the Commission. We take note with appreciation the recommendations from your activity report, particularly as it relates to the impact of COVID-19 on the enjoyment of economic, social, and cultural rights as we speak, but also as it unfolds, as it continues to unfold into the coming months and periods. We also wish on my behalf and on behalf of the Commission for your service as chairperson of the Working Group on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and indeed join you in wishing Honorable Commissioner Mwandenga a very successful tenure as he takes the mantle from you in leading this very important special mechanism of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. I'm not really sure that we have received at this point in time any request from any member of the public, state parties, NHRIs, and civil society organizations, which therefore means that this brings us to the end of the consideration of the activity report. As you rightly pointed out in your activity report, there continues to be issues of concern for Africa, particularly in terms of access to diagnostics, therapeutics, and in the event of a discovery of a vaccine, we have a challenge that we face in terms of Africa also getting access to vaccine. So it is of a human rights issue and a human rights concern that this access to healthcare and protection from COVID-19, including a fair access to vaccine, is seen as a human rights necessity that all of us as state parties to the African Charter and at the African Commission, and indeed the wider African Union system, need to insist on. Once again, thank you very much for that. I'm consulting with colleagues, staff of the Secretariat, the Acting Executive Secretary, on whether we have any other activity report that is confirmed and ready for presentation in the course of today. But I think we don't have one at this point in time, which means that this brings us to the end of our consideration of activity reports of members of the Commission for today. In the course of today, we will announce on the website of the Commission the activity reports that will be presented for tomorrow. One of those I can inform the public right away, and this relates to the activity report of the Committee on the Prevention of Torture and Inhuman Treatment, chaired by Commissioner Hattem. That will be presented tomorrow. The other activity reports that will be presented tomorrow will be communicated in the course of today, once we have confirmation from honorable members of the Commission and colleagues, legal officers supporting members of the Commission. I would like to, at this point in time, thank members of the Commission for the presentation of the activity reports that we have received, considered and adopted in the course of today. I would also wish to thank the participation of the members of the public, state parties, civil society organizations, and national human rights institutions for continuing to be part of our session. With the following days, we will continue to consider both agenda item 3. If there are requests to make a statement on the basis of agenda item 3, we give opportunity to state parties and NHRIs to make statements if they so wish, and civil society organizations as well, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. On Friday, we look forward to welcoming the representatives of the Republic of Mauritius for considering the state report of Mauritius on Friday. But between today and Thursday, we will be having activity reports of members of the Commission as well as agenda item 3 if there are states, NHRIs, and CSOs who wish to take the floor. I wish to request that those who wish to take the floor to send their registrations for taking the floor to the Commission to continue to register. And with that, I would like to wish all members of the Commission, all distinguished participants, to be healthy and safe, and a good afternoon as well as a good evening. We will reconvene again tomorrow at 9 GMT. Thank you.